Hey everyone, my name is Megan Dooley and I am an occupational therapist here to talk to you today about helping your loved one with dementia get dressed as their caregiver. This is a task that, if you are not familiar with helping someone, can be very difficult and have a lot of steps and components to it. So today's video is going to be a little bit longer than my previous ones, but I want you to know that I'm going to put in some little clips throughout the video that are just going to signify what part we're talking about with dressing. So if you want to implement some of these with your loved one, trust me, you don't want to be overwhelmed by this. So watch the first, 5 minutes, take a break, try some of those different things, and then come back to this video as needed, because it is here for you and for your guidance while the disease progresses and as you learn some of those tips and tricks of how to help your loved one fully participate in dressing to their best abilities. So I'm going to put some little words up and topics that we're going to talk about related to dressing, and that way you can kind of skip through if you've watched parts of it and come back to it at your leisure. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about with you is the physical and thinking abilities of your loved one, and then also in this little segment, the environmental surroundings. So what is the environment like that you are having your loved one get dressed in? So we're just going to spend a few minutes talking about this, and then we'll kind of move on to another topic. So the first thing that you want to kind of sit back and think about, even before you're going to help them get dressed or try some of these things. If you've been feeling frustrated or there's been some things that aren't working, whether your loved one is not completely independent in dressing any longer, or you're just, things aren't going, they're not getting dressed in the correct type of clothing, those things. So the first thing you want to look at is, does your loved one have problems with balance or motor skills that they need to, thread their pants on, button a button, close a zipper, okay? So if they're having some of those issues, you may want to bring in an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, get somebody in there to maybe look at if there's abilities to rehab some of those, or get some ideas on different ways to set up your loved one to be successful, whether it's sitting in a chair to get their pants on, maybe it's putting Velcro fasteners onto their clothing so they don't have to manipulate the buttons or close the zippers. So that's the first thing you really want to look at. Everybody goes through life, they may have had a knee replacement, a hip replacement, back problems. So although dementia may be limiting their abilities to remember how to get dressed, those physical problems can definitely hinder that as well. The second thing that you want to think about or to analyze is, does the individual have some thinking difficulties? So getting dressed is a procedural memory. It's way deep in our brain. We start learning how to get dressed at a very young age, and it's something that we learn how to do automatically. So if you think about getting dressed, even if you want to try it before really digging into how your loved one is getting dressed or how they get dressed, think about each step you do. Do you have to think about any parts of that, or can you automatically just get dressed while you're thinking about coffee and breakfast and all your appointments? So an individual with dementia may retain that ability for a long time to automatically go to their closet, to know where their underwear or their shoes are at, or how to thread those pants, but they may not. The other thing is, do they recognize their clothing? Do they recognize their closet? Are they aware that those are their clothes? And if not, can we set up the environment so that they're not overwhelmed by all these options and choices? And then finally, you really want to be aware of if they can understand what the weather is like, or if they're able to identify seasons, time of day. And that doesn't mean that they can't be very successful at getting dressed. It's just that you, as the caregiver, are going to want to make some changes to the environment and the setup of the task so that your loved one can participate fully in doing that. The last thing that was on this section was the environment. So the environment, looking around me, looking in this room, it may not seem like there's a lot going on, but there is. I have books, I have some lamps, but I also can turn on the overhead light, which is very bright. It's relatively quiet, but there are trinkets and knickknacks and drinks and all those things that could be distracting. And the other thing is it's nice and warm in here. If your loved one's getting up and you're wanting them to get dressed and they're cold, they may not want to get dressed. They would like to stay under the covers. So before really putting it on yourself as your loved one is not able to do this, these are some of the things you want to kind of tick off first before diving into really having them do the task of getting dressed. So again, if it's chilly in the room, it's too bright, there's a mirror that could distract them, some of their favorite items, whether it's music or a book, are out when you're asking them to get dressed, you may want to set up the environment a little differently. The other thing too is it may be easier for you to help them dress, say in the bathroom, maybe on the couch or their recliner, just based on your own height and abilities, but that may feel very weird to them and they might resist getting dressed. So if you need to bring in equipment or get some professional guidance on how you can best physically help them, you may need to do that in their environment that they've been getting dressed in for years. The next thing that I'm going to touch on is just how to organize that task of dressing. So we're really going to look up or talk about setting up the environment for dressing so that you're not doing all of the dressing. Okay, because I think that's the hardest part for some caregivers is they're in the room with them, they're having to assist or feel as if they have to assist. So setup of clothes and environment for dressing. Okay. So this is all before they even start that dressing task. So we're going to spend a little bit of time of just talking about some ideas, tips, and tricks that you can try before you even have them doing the task of dressing. So when we look at the environment and what could be going on in your loved one's head when they are thinking about dressing, or you bring them into their room to get dressed. So as I said, first things first, make sure that it's a familiar environment for them. It may be very difficult if you start asking them to get dressed in the bathroom or, like I said, a different room. As the disease progresses, things that maybe didn't seem as overwhelming before can really be very overwhelming to an individual with dementia. So some things that I have tried, or I have taught some caregivers that has worked really well. One thing is, as the seasons change out the clothing in the closet and the drawers. If it's summer and there are still sweaters and hoodies and jackets that are visible or readily available to your loved one, they will probably navigate towards that at some time, and they may end up in a not so safe situation going out outside when it's really hot. I had a client who we went outside in a full sweater in 90-degree weather, and it was not the best situation for him because he was just overheating. So if you can eliminate the options, that will really help them maybe just be able to do the task completely independently after that. So if you just have t-shirts and maybe some shorts or lighter pants that they can find or see, they're going to navigate to that, put that on, and you're not going to have to worry about checking on them to make sure that they selected the correct clothing for the weather. The other thing you can do is set out the entire outfit prior to them getting dressed. So whether it's right after they go to bed, they could even help. You could have them, they may not know that they're preparing their clothing for the next day, but take out a pair of socks, underwear, shirt, and pants, and package it or put it all together somewhere. And that way when they wake up, they don't have to make a choice at all. It's just there. So sometimes that having to choose or make a decision is too much and overwhelming, and your loved one may just sit there and not do anything, which can be frustrating for a caregiver, thinking that they maybe don't want to get dressed or aren't interested, but really it's probably more so that they're just very overwhelmed by the task. The other thing is if they have favorite colors or favorite styles of clothing, get that stuff. It's going to become sometimes a little difficult to not want to give your input or your idea. Some people may think that if it's their husband or wife or their parent, oh, but you look so much nicer in the sweater that you got for Christmas last year. Or, oh my gosh, you're wearing sweatpants again, but we're going to church. I really want you to put slacks on. There comes a time and a place for giving up on some of those battles and recognizing that what you're doing is you're really allowing your loved one to fully participate in as much as they can. So by putting on maybe a nice newer pair of sweats and maybe that polo shirt to go to church, you're able to go to church with your loved one. So if they enjoy that and find comfort in it, put those items out and make those readily available to them so that that is something that they are motivated to do because they like that clothing and they're going to get dressed. Okay, so the other thing too, before they actually start the dressing process, is again, if they have some of those physical difficulties, make sure that you're giving them clothing that they can be successful with. So eliminating button pants. If they enjoy wearing slacks or pants with buttons, many times a lot of my clients enjoy still putting on a nice polo. They like to wear their belts with their nice slacks and more dressier shoes. Can you substitute that with still having the button, but can it be a hook or can it be Velcro? Okay. Shoes, if they want shoes to look very nice, can you substitute a slip-on pair of shoes that are still dressy enough, or some elastic shoelaces that can allow them to not have to tie and untie their shoes? The other thing is that you really want to make sure that their clothing is going to be of an adequate fit for them. If it's too tight, they may become uncomfortable and rip that off. If it's too large, it may fall down and they may trip on it or constantly be fiddling with their clothing. It's also a good idea to check clothing for tears, holes, loose strings, those type of things, as sometimes clients or your loved ones are going to start picking at that if they can find abnormality in their clothing, and then you'll come in and they might have shredded or taken apart their whole shirt. So if they tend to do those things, maybe put those pieces of clothing aside, and that could be something if they get agitated or frustrated that you could actually give them and let them, you know, take out the string or take the buttons off or whatever. But if you're giving them clothing that has abnormalities in it, they might find that and really perseverate on that until they've, you know, taken it apart or ripped it or whatever it may be. Okay. So the last thing too, if your loved one is going to be in a wheelchair or is in a wheelchair, make sure that the clothing is loose enough. You really want to avoid seams. Those can cause rubbing or pressure sores for an individual. So there's tons of options for adaptive clothing or just checking seams. So if you're going to buy some sweatpants or looser like wind pants for individuals or even slacks, just check the seam and then the fit for the individual because you don't want them to be getting sore spots from clothing being too tight or rubbing in the wrong places. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is actually getting dressed. So let's kind of talk about that process and how we can facilitate them to be as independent as possible. So we are going to we're going to talk about actually getting dressed. What are the steps? So again, this is just here for you guys to just kind of know where we're at in the video, but the other thing is getting dressed. What are the steps? There's a lot of steps to dressing, and I really do encourage you as a caregiver to take a moment, get yourself dressed or undressed, and really think about each step and what that entails. So if, again, like I said, if you do that and you watch your loved one and you're like, I don't understand where he or she is getting lost, really, really reach out to your support groups and to your local Alzheimer's associations and get somebody in there, get an OT in there to help you navigate that and, you know, be able to identify maybe where the difficulties are lying, make a couple of changes, and then you are back to helping and guiding your loved one to be as independent as possible with that task. So we've now laid out all of the clothes, ready to get dressed. There sits your loved one, maybe freshly showered, and you're ready to help them get dressed or help them be as independent with that. Try, if your loved one is newly diagnosed, you know, you may want to take notes sooner than later, if they're still independent in dressing, on how they prefer to put their clothes on. Do they put their shirt on first? Do they prefer to put underwear, then socks, then pants? Or, you know, myself, I like to put underwear, pants, and then socks at some point. How do they do that so that when you're helping them or you're encouraging them to do that process, you're following those same steps? And that's going to really help alleviate some of that frustration or that unknown from your loved one, because they may get frustrated because they don't understand why you want them to put a shirt on before they put their pants on. Some people like to put their shirt on, have their undergarments on, and then pull their pants up so everything's tucked in. So if you have that opportunity to do that, go ahead and take notes on that and save it for when they start having difficulties. If they're already having difficulties, you want to set them up, hand them one article of clothing at a time. So you have everything set out, which if you're helping your loved one get dressed, you still want to get through that process of organizing, setting things out. One, it's going to help you know for the next day, okay, here's what my loved one's wearing. The other thing is, again, it's going to alleviate some of that stress that may come if you're pushing your loved one into their room in their wheelchair, and you have to go around and grab all the clothing, and they are watching that going, I don't know what's going on, and just getting overwhelmed. So bringing them in and having this all set up will help keep a more calm environment. So have them sit somewhere where they're comfortable and they're able to move their body. If the bed is too high and their knees or their feet are barely touching the floor, or they have some balance difficulties, they can't sit up very well, you may want to bring in a chair or a nice, you know, end storage thing at the end of the bed where they can sit with their knees a little more bent, reach the floor a little easier to be able to put on those pants, socks, and things like that. So again, hand them one piece of clothing at a time. Be very calm, be very comfortable, and you know, just very relaxed with this process, and tell them in very simple terms what to do, but very specific. So you don't want to say, okay, let's get dressed and hand them the clothing. They're going to wonder, well, okay, what am I doing? So remembering that there's step by step, just putting on a shirt, one arm, the other arm, over our head and pulling that shirt down, or, you know, arm, buttoning. So those are the steps you want to encourage them to do. And you can write those down so that if you're gone or you're like, why is this, you know, we're kind of in a rush today. Why am I telling my loved one to get dressed and they're just not doing it? You can have that, pull it out and be like, okay, yeah, I need to remember to go through each step. So you would want to say something like, okay, put your arm in, okay, put your shirt over your head, put your other arm in. Thank you. And give them adequate time to do that task. It may take them a minute to process each verbal cue. And then same thing with pants. Can you put your leg in, put your other leg in, okay, pull your pants up. So you're not cruel, you're not mean. Many times caregivers, loved ones struggle with being very direct with their loved one who has dementia because they feel as if they're coming off as cold. But understand that truly you are setting them up to not be overwhelmed. You do not want to overwhelm them because that's what really shuts them down. So you aren't cruel, you're not mean, you're not loving, you're setting them up for success by being very direct, very short cues. The other thing is be flexible with this. So if somebody is really looking at wanting to wear very similar clothing every day, kind of what we previously talked about, it's okay. You may have 5 sweatsuits in the closet, 1 for each day of the week, and they're just going to wear those. Again, what is the overarching goal? We want them to get dressed, and then we want them to participate in other activities, whether it's time with family, going to church, going for a walk, going grocery shopping with you, and that will deter from extending dressing over a long period of time in the day because you're trying to get them into something really nice, or you're trying to get them into, you know, an itchy sweater or whatever it may be. So it's okay. The other thing is sometimes individuals in the home, if it's the summer and there's air conditioning on, it's all right if they need to layer or put on a sweater, but just make sure that if you're gonna go out, so this summer, like I said, went out walking and realized, oh my gosh, this individual is wearing, you know, a very thick hoodie, which was very appropriate for in the home, but it was 90 degrees outside. Just make sure that they layer so that as they start to get warm or cold, you have that ability to comfort them by giving them a jacket or removing the jacket. The nice thing too is when they're finished dressing for each thing, give them some form of praise, whether it's a good job or thank you so much for helping me. Any of those things, oh my gosh, you look very nice today. Really want to, again, avoid criticizing or saying, oh my gosh, we were supposed to go to a baptism today and I can't believe you're wearing that. What? Sit back, take a deep breath, and realize that them going and being a part of that is probably what you truly want versus what they are wearing. Finally, I just want to talk about a little bit of adaptations that you can do in your home or changes in the environment. Okay, so I'm just going to write that up here again. So finally, adaptations or changes in the environment that are really going to help you or could really help you assist your loved one in being as independent as possible with dressing. So adaptations are changes in the environment to promote dressing. So again, what you're really wanting to look at is your loved one's abilities, your abilities to help them. And then when we still run into a barrier with that, what's going on around you that could be changed or modified to really help. So one thing that you can really do is install potentially a closet organizer or extra shelving on the countertop or by their dresser, because this may allow you to really lay out or organize the different outfits. My parents, you know, they have knickknacks and you might have your favorite photos on your dresser, and you don't want to remove those things because they're important to that person, but now where do I set out their clothing so that they really see them? So you could get some shelving or in the closet, install something that is going to really organize, and then label Monday, Tuesday, whatever you want. Label items as shirts, pants. If you need to, labeling front and back, you can put inside. Whatever you find that works, but labeling is another option to trial to help keep them more physically independent in being able to do that, because they just can't understand how that shirt might go. Or a lot of sweatpants are very difficult to be able to tell if it's the front or the back. Another option may be putting a mirror. Now, mirrors can sometimes be distracting and sometimes helpful. So you're gonna have to trial and error this a little bit. But you may put a mirror where they can see themselves and so that they can see how they're getting dressed. Okay, that might be a good option. It might become distracting, or in the later stages of dementia, sometimes seeing themselves in a mirror, they don't recognize themselves. So just trial that with a mirror to show them, hey, see you have one shoe on, or hey, look, you're getting closer. Let's just put the other side of your jacket on. Okay. Another thing you can do is make sure that there's really good lighting. So wherever you want that individual to get clothes from, direct them to that. So good lighting in closets. Closets don't always have good lighting, especially the old, not old-fashioned ones, but the ones where you just open the door and it's just one bar. There's often not lights in there. So even getting a touch light, the one that you can just push, or you can set up a system where if they open the door, the light comes on. And that way they have a good view of what they're looking at, what they're maybe going for, if it's a certain color or a particular item, a jacket, something to wear to church, whatever it may be. The other thing you can do if they seem very distracted, again, I said, if somebody is getting dressed in their room or in the bathroom and we have our supplies out or our favorite pictures of our family, what can happen is that can become distracting and someone may grab their book or they may grab, you know, their favorite CD or whatever it may be. So to avoid some of that distraction, you can get a rolling screen or a decorative screen even there that you can put in a room. And all you do is pull that out to hide whatever is distracting them. If that's their dresser, maybe their knickknacks, you can just pull that screen out, fold it up and put it away once you're done, but that will kind of help them keep their focus on the task. So any other things that come up, you know, feel free to email me. My information is below. And again, take your time with this. You guys are great. You're awesome. You're appreciated for all that you do as caregivers. And it's trial and error. And as the disease progresses, things are going to change. And there's always going to be ebbs and flows in each task. And some you may be able to fix quickly and others might take a little bit of time. But I hope this just provides you a little bit of a toolbox of things to trial. And if it's not going well, again, reach out to your support groups, to the Alzheimer's Association, contact your doctor, get an OT eval or an OT in there, help you with some of that dressing task. So please let me know if you have any questions about this, and I hope you have a great day.